Laziness could be a real pain. But as they say,
can't escape from crossing fate!
It's about time I finally talked about the history of a certain genre that I can never escape. Fighting games. Hey guys, DynamiteX246 here, and it's time for another discussion. Now, unlike the last two, this is going to be a short one. This is going to be me talking about fighting games that I play, and what I really think of them. Now, before we start, there's one thing I'd like to mention. I won't get into detail on Super Smash Bros. And Blaze Blue, mostly because I already mentioned them in my previous discussion. If you want to know how I got into them, then just watch my 10 years video. Now let's get started. Oddly enough, the earliest memory of any fighting games I could recall is, well, Mortal Kombat. Yeah. Well, to be fair, I never recalled watching any kind of fatality. My memory of that time is pretty blurry and I couldn't really make out on what happened, so yeah. But what I can remember though is I would eventually get into the series years later, and I would own my own Mortal Kombat game, and that would be Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. Its bonus features and its interesting weapon system really got me hooked. I would get the next games such as Deception, the new reboot, and Mortal Kombat X. I've been pretty interested on the lore and the characters of the series. It even inspired me to work on a certain story I'm doing, but that's a talk for another time. Basically, I owe a lot to Mortal Kombat. It introduced me to a genre of martial arts action, and it got me into ninjas. Next is the Tekken series. I sorta have a strange relationship with this series, but regardless, it's still a very fun fighting game series, and I got into the series thanks to my aunt when she gave me Tekken 5. And boy, what an introduction. When I first played it, it was strange and different. This was during the time I wasn't used to, like, trying out completely new games that I never heard of. It was a remarkable experience, to say the least. This game had really nice music, really nice graphics, the fighting, really great, and the arcade history was a very nice touch. Nothing else to say, but thanks, Pam. Now that I've officially gotten to Tekken, I also bought the previous games. But eventually I would buy myself the next Tekken game, which is Tekken 6. And no, I'm not talking about that. Not yet. Around this time I got into the Soul Calibur series. And to be honest, I have a lot more pleasant memories of this series than Tekken. And it has my favorite cast of characters in any fighting game series. And the game that got me into the series is Soul Calibur 4. Characters and the designs really hooked me in, but not as much as the graphics and the fighting system. Although it was sort of complicated for my younger self. It was an interesting experience though, playing a fighting game with swords and stuff. But I believe the main reason why me and my brother always comes back to Soul Calibur is the character creations. The only games I know that does that is the WWE games. So adding that in a fantasy-themed fighting game actually makes it a lot more appealing to me. Heck, that's mostly the reason why me and my brother still play Soul Calibur 5. Despite the fact that it lacks some additional features like the previous Soul Caliburs, no arcade endings, and probably one of the worst story modes next to this one. But me and my bro always come back to it thanks to the created characters we made. Heck, the created characters we made are usually the only characters we use. But I digress. I look forward to the next Soul Calibur game coming out this year. Strangely enough, I got into Dead or Alive thanks to Halo. Dead or Alive 4 had a guest character, and her name is Nicole. And and she just so happens to be a Spartan from the Halo series. Surreal, yes, but it is still pretty fun at the time. Now that novelty would wear off eventually, but I would eventually enjoy the series itself for what it is. Although this series was known for its fan service, the fighting feels loose and fast, which makes it above the others in my opinion, and the lore did hook me a bit, although I was mostly into the ninja parts. And I'll freely admit, the poster girl of the series, Kasumi, is one of my favorite characters for numerous reasons. And hey, you can't go wrong with Ninja Gaiden's Ryu Hayabusa. So yeah, Dead or Alive. Fun series, I look forward to its next game this year too. Okay, I already mentioned that BlazBlue is one of my favorite fighters. And even though my bro's more of a Guilty Gear player, I still enjoy Guilty Gear whenever I have time for it. And like BlazBlue, it has tons of soundtracks to remember. And I am happy it gained an audience once the XR games showed up. If there's one thing I could give Guilty Gear XR, it is that its story is pretty interesting compared to the later BlazBlue stories. Although I'll get into that more some other time. So that's Guilty Gear. The last fighting game series I want to talk about here is Street Fighter. And compared to the rest, it hasn't really left a huge impact on me. But despite that, I still found interest in the series. It's mostly thanks to the fans' warm reception of this series as a whole that it creates a lot of fun and creative things, like parodies, just like Street Fighter the later years, and the many sprite animations over the years. Not to mention a very likable cast of characters that are easy to understand. And since we're talking about Street Fighter, I might as well talk about a certain game. Street Fighter Cross Tekken. This was during the time I was still into Tekken more than Street Fighter, but I was still willing to check it out, and it held my interest for a while. So much so it was me and my brother's #1 fighting game for a while, at least until BlazBlue showed up. And even though the game has many flaws, and I mean many flaws, music's nice, the fighting is good enough, and I'm still a sucker for crossover. Makes you wonder how they're gonna do Tekken Cross Street Fighter if it ever gets released at it. And if there's anything else I would have to say about Street Fighter, well, I get why people love it so much. Its simple nature and to-the-point attitude is what clicks most people. Now true, there's a story and the characters do pull you in, but it may be just me, but I feel the spirit of Street Fighter feels a little more genuine, if that makes sense. I mean, I might have grown up with Tekken, but I still feel more comfortable and right at home in the Street Fighter community. And yeah, that's basically my video. Let me tell ya, it's not that easy condensing all my thoughts and all the fighting games I played in less than 10 minutes, but I hope you enjoyed my own personal history of fighting games. I would like to know what's your favorite fighting game series. Now, this is usually a part where I say, this is Dynamite signing out and have a nice day, but there's something I want to talk about. A certain fighting game. A fighting game that changed my outlook in things. A fighting game that I avoided talking about just early. I did that because this kind of subject needs its own video. Or many.